Hello everyone, welcome to Real Estate with Raza for our weekly update. Today we're going to be discussing two main topics. We're going to be talking about investors and real estate prices and also the rental market. And along with that, we're going to talk about the Bank of Canada and what they're expecting to do with the rates and how they're going to curtail inflation to bring it down to 2%. So let's get started. Now the first thing we're going to discuss is investors. Now anybody who owns a home with a basement apartment or a rental unit or has one separate rental unit or has multiple properties that they rent out, they need to keep in consideration that the Canadian government has increased immigration numbers for next year, the year after, and into 2025. So next year, the Canadian government is looking to bring in 465,000 people into Canada. Now, out of those numbers, 1/3, which is about 155,000, come directly to Ontario. So that's going to help feed the rental units that if there's any vacancies. And if your tenants are moving out of town or back home, wherever they're moving to, you're going to still have tenants. So these numbers look really good at the surface and they can be deceiving. So I want to share one other thing with you, that Ontario right now is facing a massive exodus, and that's something a lot of people are not talking about. Even though we're growing yearly in numbers, let's say 155,000 or 160 or 170,000 coming to Ontario every year based off the Canadian immigration numbers, but 1 year from second quarter of this year. So if we go back to the second quarter of this year, the first quarter, and the previous 2 quarters of 2021, Ontario lost approximately 155,000 people to other provinces. And where did they go? Now we have a chart here. Primarily, 25%, 31,500 went to Alberta. Now Alberta's been launching a massive campaign. And they did it in 2017 and it didn't work. They launched it again in 2019 and it's working. Now a lot of people can no longer afford Ontario. A lot of students can no longer afford it because that's primarily who's been renting up all these homes and these units. People are renting up by room is to a lot of students. And they've started migrating. And people, new families as well, have started migrating. So they're going to Alberta primarily, along with British Columbia, Quebec City, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland is primarily where all the people are going. So if we're losing, let's say, 155,000 people every year because how expensive Ontario has become, even people moving north in Ontario are still facing high expenses, so they're actually leaving the province. And you know, the Canadian government's telling us that we're getting 465,000 people coming into our country next year, and 1/3 of those come directly to Ontario. That's approximately 155,000 people. We mentioned that earlier. But if we're getting 155,000 and we're losing 150 to 160,000, is it really growing? It's not. So keep that into consideration. Also, the newcomers, when they get here, a lot of them are finding it too expensive. The rental rates have gone out of control, and those numbers could increase too. So out of the newcomers coming in, a lot of them could leave as well. And I remember a time back in the 90s when my parents, you know, we owned a bunch of investment properties, and I was a lot younger at that time. I didn't understand how the markets worked. And I remember I must have been about 19 years old, and we used to put ads in the paper and the phone stopped ringing. The tenants just disappeared. Vacancies increased. It wasn't just us, it was other people that we knew that were in the same business, that tenants had gone. And what happened in the early 90s, you know, Ontario faced a massive real estate crisis. And people, you know, it affected the job market, it affected people's day-to-day lives, so they left the province. They went to other provinces where they could get a job and they could get a cheaper housing unit. So at that time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand the concept of people that actually, you know, move from province to province. But as the years have passed, I've learned that is very much the case, and it continues every year. The only concern for Ontario is that we're moving faster in that direction. Every quarter, more people are shifting. I've been in the real estate market myself for 20 years. We're on the phones with our clients all the time, and we've had people that were looking to purchase in Ontario tell us that, you know, hey Raza, we just decided to migrate. We're going to Alberta. That's primarily where everybody's going. And a lot of our friends have gone, our family has shifted, so it makes it easier to people to migrate there. They're not going to be alone. So keep that in mind. So if you have a good tenant, hold on to them, value that tenant, because there could come a time, let's say into next year or the year after that, that if the real estate market does not move back in a more of a positive way and the economic slowdown continues because of supply chain and inflation, then we're going to have problems with tenants. So investors, homeowners who have basement apartments or any type of rental unit or rental property, plan accordingly and understand that rents can come down and people can leave the province. And this influx of tenants who are bidding to get properties right now can change, just like the housing market did. If you went in January of this year or February and told anyone, we were having so many problems with our buyer clients, telling them, it's not a good time to buy. The market's gone into a frenzy. There's no inventory. I keep the inventory numbers with me, and if I look at it right now, on January the 7th, I just pulled to that page, we had 2,200 homes on the market. 2,200. Now, today we have 6,588. Now it's triple that amount. There's a lot more homes in the market, but people just couldn't imagine the prices coming down, and they did. Similar thing could happen to the rental market. So if you're an investor, there are certain investor type of units you want to hold. Now, when it comes to GTA, there's certain pockets in the GTA where rental rates will not be affected as much as others, and you will have, even if you have to reduce your rent, you'll have less vacancies. So reach out to us. Again, the links below is you can organize a call with myself or anybody on our team, depending on the question you have. And we'll give you our recommendations that even if you currently have a property and it's a little bit outside of Toronto, more in the north or east or west side of the city, in the suburbs, you may want to consider shifting some of those properties into the city itself, because people will migrate back into the city to live, because it's going to get cheaper if the rental market gets hit. The next thing we want to talk about is the Bank of Canada and what the Bank of Canada is doing to fight inflation. And one of the announcements they've made, which I pay close attention to and I would advise everyone, is they're going to do anything they have to do to fight inflation. And the reason that is, if the Bank of Canada cannot fight inflation off, it could really destroy our economy. If you've seen things that happen to countries like Argentina, when their inflation took off and got out of control, it devalued the currency greatly. So a country like Canada cannot let that happen, and they will not. So the Bank of Canada is saying they will do everything they're able to do to stop that from happening. And that means if they continue raising rates into next year, they will do that. That could affect the real estate prices and the overall economy in a great way. If we go into a recession, they're okay with that. If we go into a deeper recession to fight inflation, they're okay with that too. So we were discussing tenants, real estate prices, things like that a little bit earlier, and that will continue to get much worse, because if the job market gets hit, then the tenant situation will get really out of control, and people will really migrate out of this province to get any kind of job they can get and find housing for their family. So the Bank of Canada is letting us know directly. Now, we have a lot of YouTube channels and people like myself who are providing information, great analysts, the bankers who release reports. It's all valuable information, but it's all opinion based, unless it's past information based off of stats, but that's in the past now. We're talking about immigration numbers moving into the future. We're talking about prices in the future. Nobody can dictate that, explain that, or predict that better than the Bank of Canada. So whenever they make an announcement, do your utmost best to be aware of what they're doing with interest rates and what they're saying. Read between the lines. They don't ever come out and say, hey guys, our house is on fire, because then a panic will break out in our country. They're much more responsible than that. They will warn us, give us slight warnings of cracks in the economy that they're seeing. And they are doing that by telling us that if they have to raise rates more to fight inflation, they will. The only two ways you can really fight inflation is by raising rates or reducing jobs, reducing people's incomes. So if the rates keep going up, then jobs will be reduced and people's incomes will be lost, which will directly affect inflation and definitely reduce it. But what will that do to you and your family? So keep in mind what's happening, what direction we're headed in, and how real estate prices could affect the overall economy if they continue to drop. And the government of Canada is saying this to us directly, that they are going to keep going until the supply chain issues open up, and things like household goods, groceries, anything that you really buy on a day-to-day basis, besides our fuel, is going to get really expensive. And if they can't control that price, then unfortunately they're going to continue to raise rates, and that's going to have a dire effect on our economy. It's not the end of the world. It's just something we have to get through. So as an investor, as a homeowner, as a person migrating into our country, this great country, and coming into our province, you're going to be facing these challenges, and people are going to be making shifts. And whatever shifts one party makes, it affects us all. So keep that in mind. Again, if you have any questions or I want any specific information, in December, when we make the last week of December, when we make our video, we're going to be launching a report about what we foresee coming into 2023 because we're in the last month of the year. Homes in the market as of today, right now, is December 1st. We have 6,588 homes in the market. Out of those 6,588, 3,367 have been on the market for longer than 30 days. So half of the market right now has been sitting on the market for longer than 30 days. We know it's because they're either overpriced or the home needs too much work that no one's willing to put into it based on the price they're listed at. Condo market, we have 5,483 condos on GTA right now listed for sale. Out of those, 2,843 have been on the market for longer than 30 days. So that's actually over 50% of those homes have been on the market for longer than 30 days. So keep that in mind. Again, it's because they're overpriced or they need work and the seller is not willing to accept the fact that prices have come down so considerably and they don't want to lower it for a lower price. So there are these homes that are on the market for that long will either reduce their price or they will come off the market, one or the other. If you have any specific questions, please reach out to us. Again, the invite's down below. You can book a call with myself or anybody on the team. And depending on what question you have, and until next week, thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful day. Take care and bye-bye.